I have never believed in ghosts, or curses, or any of those late-night radio stories about people vanishing without a trace. But after the morning I woke up alone, I am no longer sure what I believe except that life can shatter quietly, without warning, in the time it takes for a sunrise to creep over your blinds. When I first opened my eyes, the room felt off. Not frightening, just hollow. It was the kind of silence you only noticed when you expect no's. No faint music from my sister S room. No clatter of dishes. Not even the house settling with its usual groans. I lay there for a full minute, waiting for some ordinary sound to prove I was imagining it. Nothing came. The clock on my phone read 8:07 a.m. We are not a late sleeping family. By now, Mom should have been humming over her plants, Dad should have been making too much noise in the kitchen, and my sister should have been yelling at me for hogging the bathroom. A typical morning in our chaotic little household. The absence of that routine pressed against me like a physical weight. I called out, "Hey, did everyone sleep in?" My voice sounded brittle, like it belonged to a stranger. Pulling on yesterday's hoodie, I padded across the hallway to my sister's room. Her door stood wide open. The bed was made meticulously, which was suspicious in itself. She never made her bed. Not like that. And on her pillow, perfectly centered, was Mr. Niebles, the stuffed rabbit she had carried everywhere since kindergarten. His threadbare ears flopped to one side, his glassy eyes staring up at me. The sight unsettled me more than the emptiness itself. In my parents' room, the unease sharpened. The curtains were half drawn, sunlight carving long bars across the carpet. On the nightstand lay Mom's glasses atop the open book she had been reading last night. The page was dog-eared, the spine broken from her habit of bending books back too far. Dad's watch sat beside his wallet, both where he always left them before bed. Their phones were plugged in, still charging, screens lighting up with unread notifications. Everything was exactly where it should have been except them. I checked the bathrooms. Empty. The basement. Empty. Even the attic, though I had to steel myself before pulling the cord to unfold the ladder. Dust motes swirled in the slanted light, but no footprints disturbed the insulation. The kitchen offered no answers, only more questions. Last night's dishes were still drying on the rack. The chairs were pushed in neatly under the table, and in the center of that table sat something small and strange. At first I thought it was a broken piece of jewelry maybe my sister's. But as I drew closer, I saw it was not metal or plastic. It was smooth, bone-colored, and slightly warm to the touch. Its surface was etched with fine lines that formed no pattern I recognized, yet staring at them gave me a dull ache behind the eyes, as if my brain was trying to read a language it had once known and forgotten. A chill swept over me that had nothing to do with temperature. I looked around again, hoping for a note, a joke, a camera crew ready to yell, "Gotcha." But there was nothing. Just a kitchen full of evidence that 3 people had existed here yesterday and vanished in the night. That was when I noticed the refrigerator. It hummed a low, comforting background noise I had heard every day of my life was gone. The fridge was plugged in. The light inside worked, but it was silent, as though even machines had been muted. I put the object down and pressed my palms flat against the table, trying to steady my breathing. Thoughts came in jagged fragments. Car accident, kidnapping, a dream. I considered calling the police, but how do you report something like this without sounding insane? Hello. My entire family is gone, and they left behind a thing I cannot describe. Instead, I shouted their names until my throat felt raw. The only reply was the house creaking in the morning sun. I stumbled to the front door, half expecting to see our cars gone. But both sat in the driveway exactly where they had been last night. No sign of forced entry, no muddy footprints on the porch. The neighbors' houses looked the same as always, cars leaving for work, sprinklers ticking across their lawns. It was as though the world had continued without noticing 3 people had been erased from it. My phone buzzed with a notification, and for a second I felt a flicker of relief, maybe a text from Mom or Dad explaining some emergency. But it was just a weather alert. Dense fog advisory for tonight. I looked back at the object on the table. It seemed to catch the light in a way that made it appear to pulse, though I knew that had to be my imagination. Still, I could not shake the thoughts that it was not just a thing they had forgotten, it was a thing they had left for me. Intentionally. I should have left it there. I should have run to the neighbors, called the police, done anything but what I did next. I reached out and picked it up. The smooth surface pressed against my palm felt almost alive, like skin, like memory. That was when I knew, deep in my gut, that my family's disappearance was not an accident or a prank or a misunderstanding. It was the beginning of something I was never meant to survive. If you had asked me yesterday morning what my biggest worry was, I would have said or maybe the fact that our washing machine made a grinding noise whenever it hit the spin cycle. Normal things, the kind you can fix with a little study or a call to a repairman. That day started like any other. Sunlight streamed through the blinds in soft stripes, and the smell of bacon drifted from the kitchen. My sister, Kara, was perched on a stool, scrolling on her phone, her hair in a messy bun and Mr. Nibbles tucked under one arm like she was 5 instead of 16. She didn't even notice she was holding him anymore. It was as much a part of her as her sarcasm. Mom was humming tunelessly as she flipped pancakes. She always hummed when she was happy, and for a moment the sound felt like a protective charm holding the world together. Dad sat at the table with the paper, pretending to read the headlines but sneaking looks at the crossword. There was nothing cinematic about it. No eerie foreshadowing. We joked about Kara's terrible grades in gym class, and Dad teased me about my messy room. Even the weather was unremarkable. Overcast with a light breeze. If I replay the day in my mind, searching for a glitch in reality, there is none. In the afternoon, Dad and I fixed the loose gutter on the porch. He cursed when the drill slipped, then laughed, a low, warm sound that felt permanent. Kara filmed us and threatened to post it online. Mom stood in the doorway, pretending to scold us for being loud. Dinner was chicken pot pie. Mom's favorite show played quietly in the background, filling the room with canned laughter. We talked about the fog advisory for the night, joking that the neighborhood would look like a horror movie. Nobody flinched. Nobody suspected. After dinner, Kara went upstairs to video chat with her friends. Dad watched a rerun of some old cop show. Mom read on the couch, her glasses sliding down her nose. I stayed up late finishing an essay, the glow of my laptop screen the only light in the room by the time I closed it. I remember glancing at the clock 11:43 p.m. and hearing the low hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the hallway clock, and the distant, comforting sound of Dad's snore. It was the kind of domestic noise you take for granted, the soundtrack of belonging. When I finally went to bed, the house seemed to exhale a soft settling, like a hand on your shoulder. I thought about the fog rolling in overnight and how, in the morning, the world might look slightly different under its gray veil. I had no inkling that the world itself would be different. Sometimes, when I replay that day, I wonder if I missed something, some fleeting strangeness that would have warned me. Did Kara's laugh sound a little hollow? Did the shadows in the corners stretch too far? Did Mom's humming falter for half a second? But even now, with hindsight sharpened into paranoia, the memories remain stubbornly normal. It is almost worse that way. It means there was no omen. No whispered warning. Whatever came for them did not announce itself with thunder or screams. It slipped in silently, like fog through an open window, and took everything while the world slept. That night, as I drifted toward sleep, I remember hearing what I thought was a faint tapping like a tree branch against the siding. I told myself it was just the wind and rolled over, but sometimes I think about that sound, and my stomach knots. Maybe it was not the wind. Maybe it was the first brush of something vast and patient, testing the edges of our world. In the morning, all that was left of my family was the echo of their laughter and that impossible object on the table. The ordinariness of the day before only makes the emptiness more grotesque. At first, I searched like a rational person. I checked the backyard, the driveway, even the garage, expecting to find my dad tinkering with something or my mom on the phone with a neighbor. But the yard was eerily still. The swing on the porch swayed slightly, though there was no wind. I called out again, louder this time. Mom? Dad? Kara. The names felt heavy in my mouth, like they did not belong here anymore. I moved through the house slowly, the way you do when you are afraid of startling something you cannot see. The kitchen was immaculate, unnervingly so. Mom hated dirty dishes, but she was not obsessive. Last night's pot pie pan had been scrubbed spotless, set to dry. The counters gleamed. It looked staged, as if someone had erased every sign of human life, but left just enough to make it feel familiar. Their living room was the same. The throw blanket folded perfectly on the couch, the TV remote placed dead center on the coffee table. Mom's reading glasses were still balanced on her open book, the page marked with a pressed daisy Kara had given her. That small detail punched the air out of my lungs. It was a frozen moment of tenderness in a room now devoid of its owners. I climbed the stairs, my footsteps echoing louder than they should have. Kara's room smelled faintly of her vanilla lotion. Her bed was made so neatly it felt alien. Kara never made her bed. And there was Mr. Nibbles, her stuffed rabbit, propped up on her pillow like a sentry. His button eyes seemed to follow me. In my parents' room, Dad's watch and wallet lay where he always left them. Mom's phone sat charging on the nightstand. The closet doors were closed, but when I opened them, the faint smell of her lavender perfume wafted out. Nothing was out of place, and that was the problem. I opened the bathroom door and caught my reflection in the mirror. My own wide-eyed, pale face startled me. The overhead light flickered once, just enough to make my heart jump. I tried to laugh at myself, but the sound felt brittle. I dialed my mom's phone. From somewhere upstairs, it began to ring. I followed the sound to their room, found her phone on the charger, and watched it light up with my own number. The ringing stopped when I ended the call. Outside, the fog had thickened, turning the world beyond our windows into a featureless gray void. The neighbor's house was just a suggestion of a shape. The streetlight flickered, the halo of its glow shrinking and expanding like a dying heartbeat. I tried calling my dad. Then Kara. Both phones rang from inside the house. Theirs were still on their nightstands. The ordinary world began to feel paper-thin, like a backdrop I could tear if I pressed too hard. My breathing grew shallow. I checked the front door, locked from the inside. No footprints on the porch. The driveway was empty. My dad's car still parked where it had been last night. Every rational explanation crumbled. They had not gone for a walk, not left for errands. They would have taken their phones, their wallets, their keys. The idea that 3 people could vanish without a trace while I slept in the next room was too big to process. Back in the kitchen, the object still sat on the table, waiting. It seemed to hum faintly now, though maybe that was my blood rushing in my ears. Its carved lines caught the weak light from the window, twisting in ways that made my vision blur. I told myself I was imagining it. That shock was making me see things, but the air around it felt denser, heavier, like the atmosphere before a thunderstorm. I stepped closer. The silence pressed in on me, deeper now, like the house itself was holding its breath. Something shifted at the edge of my vision just, a shadow moving in the fog outside, or maybe a trick of the light. I spun to look, but the window revealed only gray nothingness. The object waited, smooth, impossible, patient. I whispered, to no one and nothing, "Where are you?" My voice sounded swallowed by the air, as if the house itself did not want to carry the words. And then, faintly, somewhere deep in the walls, came a single, deliberate tap. Not pipes, not the house settling, a tap, like a knuckle against wood. That was when I stopped pretending I was alone. I do not remember deciding to sit down at the table, but suddenly I was there, hunched over the strange object like it might whisper an explanation if I looked closely enough. Its surface was unnervingly smooth, almost too perfect to be carved by human hands. The grooves etched into it didn't seem random, but I could not trace any recognizable pattern. They almost seemed to move when I looked away, rearranging themselves just enough to make me question my memory. The longer I stared, the heavier the air felt. The kitchen clock ticked loudly, each second a hammer against my nerves. When I blinked, I thought I saw a faint glow seeping from the groovy pale, the color of moonlight on water, but when I blinked again, it was gone. I needed answers. My first thought was to call anyone but. Who do you call when your entire family has vanished without a sound? The police. What would I even say? Hi, my family disappeared overnight and left a cursed rock on the table. The idea felt ridiculous even in my terror. Instead, I grabbed my phone and snapped a photo of the object. The instant I pressed the shutter, the screen went black. When it came back on, the photo album showed nothing but static, a swirling mass of gray and black pixels. I tried again, and again the image corrupted, but this time for a fraction of a second. The static seemed to form shapes' faces, maybe mouths open in silent screams. I shoved the phone in my pocket and forced a shaky laugh. Okay, that's normal. Totally fine. My voice cracked, making the lie obvious. The tap came again louder this time. 2 quick knocks from somewhere deep in the walls. It was not plumbing. It was not settling wood. It sounded purposeful, like someone signaling. I stood and moved toward the sound, every step heavy and deliberate. As I reached the hallway, the lights flickered. The shadows on the walls seemed to stretch too far, twisting unnaturally. But when I whipped my head around, everything looked normal again. In the living room, the TV flickered on by itself. The screen showed static. Then a frame of Kara's face from a video we had taken weeks ago. Her laughing, mid-sentence before dissolving back into static. My stomach turned to ice. I backed away, my hand brushing the family photos on the wall. But something was wrong with them, too. The faces were slightly blurred, as if smudged by invisible fingers. In one of the photos, our family portrait from last summer, my own face was the only one still sharp. My parents and Kara were faded, their features almost erased. Panic clawed at me. I stumbled back into the kitchen, the one place that still felt solid. The object hadn't moved, but now I noticed a faint ring of condensation forming around it on the table, as though it were too cold for the room. I thought of the fog outside, thick and impenetrable. I opened the front door, hoping for a neighbor, a car, some sign of life. But the world beyond the porch was gone. Not obscured. Gone? The porch steps led down into gray nothingness, like the house was floating in a void. I stepped back inside and slammed the door. My pulse thundered in my ears. I grabbed my dad's watch from their nightstand and checked the time. 8:32 a.m. But my phone said 3:14 a.m. The kitchen clock had stopped at midnight 3 times. 3 times. That did not match. The tapping came again this time directly behind me. I spun, but nothing was there. Only the object, waiting. I touched it without thinking. The instant my fingers brushed its surface, the room tilted. The air seemed to stretch and compress all at once, and for a heartbeat, I was not in the kitchen anymore. I was standing in the woods near our house, but wrong trees too tall, sky too wide, stars I didn't recognize burning in impossible constellations. Whispers rustled through the branches, but the words were in no language I knew. Then, as quickly as it came, the vision was gone. I was back in the kitchen, breath ragged, heart racing. My fingers tingled, as if they had been somewhere cold. I staggered back, knocking over a chair. My mind scrambled for rationality, hallucination, stress, exhaust, but the smell of pine lingered faintly in the air, and a single, dried, leaf-red brittle now lay on the kitchen floor. Our trees were not evergreens, and none of them had leaves like that. I picked up the leaf and stared at it, my hand trembling. This was no dream. Something had reached through the fabric of reality and touched me. From the living room, the TV flickered again. This time, a voice came through the static faint, distorted but unmistakably. "Kara's, we're not gone," she whispered, "but you should not have picked it up." The screen went dark. The silence afterward was absolute. The next few minutes, or maybe it was hours, bled together into a haze of static and panic. I stood in the kitchen staring at the dark TV screen, my breath fogging slightly in the air, though the thermostat still glowed a steady 72 degrees. My fingers itched with the memory of the object's impossible cold. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. The line clicked, then filled with a low, pulsing hum, most like a heartbeat through a tunnel. No operator, no ringing, just that steady, unnatural throb. After 30 seconds, a voice cut through, thin and brittle. "You should not have touched it." I dropped the phone. It landed screen first, the glow dying instantly. When I picked it up, the battery was dead, though it had been at 70% moments earlier. The fog outside pressed against the windows like a living thing. I tried the back door, thinking maybe I could walk to a neighbor's, but when I opened it, the porch light illuminated nothing but a swirling gray void. The world beyond had been erased. I backed into the hallway, passing the family photos again. Now, even my own face was smudged, just an outline. It was as if reality was redacting us one by one. A whisper brushed my ear, Kara's voice, soft and familiar. "Do you remember the lake?" I spun, heart pounding. There was no one there, but a memory surfaced unbidden. Kara and I, as kids, standing by the lake near our old vacation cabin, watching ripples form on a perfectly still surface. In the memory, something vast shifted beneath the water, just out of sight. But that had never happened, or had it? I stumbled upstairs, half hoping I'd wake up to find this was a nightmare. In my room, my laptop was still open on my desk. Its screen flickered, showing my desktop for a moment, then a folder that didn't exist before. Family. I clicked it. Inside was a single video file named Look. Against my better judgment, I played it. The video was black at first, then slowly faded in. Kara sitting on her bed, clutching Mr. Nibbles. She was looking directly at the camera, but her eyes were too dark, swallowing the light. Her lips moved, but the audio lagged, distorted. "It's not outside. It's between." The screen went black. When it came back, it showed me sleeping in my own bed from an angle that suggested the camera had been inches from my face. The timestamp said it had been recorded at 2:03 a.m., less than 6 hours ago. I slammed the laptop shut and staggered backward, knocking over a stack of books. My heart was a drumbeat in my ears. The object's hum returned faint but insistent, pulling my gaze back to the kitchen downstairs. I crept down, every step creaking louder than it should have. The grooves on its surface had changed again, forming what looked like concentric circles spiraling inward. Another whisper, this time Dad's voice. We didn't leave. It was so close I could feel the breath on my neck. I spun, but the room was empty. Desperate for proof I wasn't losing my mind, I opened the blinds, hoping for any landmark in the fog. For a fraction of a second, the world beyond sharpened trees with twisted branches that did not belong, a horizon bending in impossible angles. And, far off, 3 silhouettes, standing perfectly still. I blinked, and it was gone. I ran to the front door, yanking it open again. Nothing but the void. But now, faintly, I could hear a low chorus like dozens of voices humming a tuneless song just beyond hearing. I thought about stepping outside, about testing the porch steps, but something deep inside, some animal instinct, screamed that if I left the threshold, I would not return. I closed the door, bolted it, and slid to the floor. My mind flickered through every horror movie I'd ever mocked, every urban legend I'd laughed off. None of them prepared me for the way the world could simply stop being. The object's hum grew louder, syncing perfectly with my heartbeat. My vision blurred, and for a second, I saw a different kitchen, darker, older, walls rotting, dishes broken on the floor. My family sat at the table, their faces pale and hollow, eyes bottomless voids. They turned toward me in perfect unison and opened their mouths, but no sound came. Then, just as suddenly, I was back. The hum faded to silence. A notification tone chimed from my phone. Ava, though it was still dead. The screen lit briefly, displaying a text message from an unknown number. "You are next." The screen went black again. I sat there, shaking, staring at the object. For the first time since waking, I allowed myself to cry, not because I was scared, though I was, but because some deep part of me understood. The house, the fog, the broken world outside. None of it was broken. It was me. The tapping started again, soft, rhythmic, patient. It wasn't a warning. It was a summons.